Ripple, XRP's parent company, has bagged yet another court victory in its protracted struggle with U.S. financial regulators, giving the coin some price stability. XRP has had a year-over-year return of over 211%, but the actual question is, will they win, or will the SEC overturn the whole case? What happened at the hearing, and what is it that Hinman is hiding? Stay tuned to find out all the details of the case. But first, we are giving away $25 at the end of the month to one random subscriber. To start on their XRP journey, all you need to do is to like the video, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on XRP in the comment section. Welcome, XRP Army. Let's grow the XRP Lab community by pressing the like button and subscribe. Make sure to keep watching because we have an interesting fact about XRP that you might not be aware of. At the hearing, the legal question was whether the judge would allow former SEC Director Hinman to be deposed by Ripple. The relevant statute states that high-ranking officials may not be deposed unless there is a compelling reason to do so. As you may recall, former SEC Director Hinman gave a speech in 2018 in which he stated that Ether was not a security in his opinion, and we learned that he also spoke with the Ethereum Foundation about a week before the speech, as well as some crypto exchanges about his views on whether Ether was security. Now, why is this significant? Because Ripple has asserted the mere notice defense, which asks whether Ripple had reasonable notice that its XRP token could be classified as a security. The fact that we heard from a new SEC attorney, Ms. Stewart, was the first thing that caught our attention as we listened to the hearing. We thought she started off strong, but what was more interesting was that we had not heard from Attorney Tenreiro in a long time. This could indicate that the principal counsel for the SEC has changed. We'll have to wait and see how things play out over the next few weeks. In any event, we believe Ms. Stewart did an excellent job laying out the SEC position. You can have high-ranking Secret Service officials deposed in every case the SEC is engaged in. Otherwise, the officials' retirement years would be spent being deposed day after day. Ms. Stewart was excellent until the judge asked her first question, which was a curveball question that sprang out of nowhere and was actually the subject of the hearing. And the question was this. In his affidavit supporting the motion, Mr. Hinman stated that the speech was simply his personal opinions. The speech was intended to represent my own personal beliefs, Hinman writes in paragraph 13 of his declaration. So the judge wondered how a high-level official protective privilege could apply to statements that he expressed solely in his own view. That inquiry made us sit up and take notice. We hadn't expected it at all, and the SEC attorney hadn't either. Now that this problem had been properly documented in the paper, we reasoned that the court might want to hear more from Ripple about what they planned to learn from Hinman that wasn't already in his address. We believed she required more from Ripple. That, however, was not the case. The point is that Judge Annette Byrne is well aware that her decision set a precedent and will be cited and relied upon in future instances. She's also conscious, as any competent judge should be, that she needs to keep a good record of why she made certain decisions. Not only for that reason but also in case a judgment is overturned. There was case authority on the subject of personal versus official views. Therefore, the SEC made a significant mistake, and the Secret Service had omitted to include it in their briefings. Some judges now won't even allow you to discuss a case if it hasn't been filed. Nonetheless, Judge Annette Byrne's letter argued. We looked at a case called the Nachios case, and it's basically a case that was a little useful for the SEC but a lot damaging. Because, even though the official prevailed on the privilege issue in the Nachios case, the court allowed him to be deposed first. The parties then returned to court to debate the privileged arguments, which is essentially what Rebel wants to do in this case, after the questions were answered and the objections were expressed. We call this a judge's hearing because we believe the judge already knew what she was going to do. However, she wanted to make a record for both cases of the president and appellate purposes. She intended to make it clear that the speech was extraordinary, that Hinman stated his personal opinion that Ether was not a security and that the extraordinary nature of the statement was the reason she would allow the deposition to proceed. So, when it became clear that the judge would allow the deposition to proceed, she asked the parties if they were moving forward on Monday because it had already been scheduled for the 19th, and Ripple responded yes, and the SEC's attorney said she wasn't sure they needed time to evaluate. Now that there was a scheduled deposition, the judge indicated she would allow it to proceed. But the SEC will evaluate, which can only imply one thing. Absent an agreement between the parties, the SEC plans to appeal the judgment permitting the deposition to proceed, or at the very least to contemplate doing so, and you have no clue how rare an interlocutory appeal is. First, meeting the criteria is nearly impossible, allowing the deposition to be manifestly incorrect. The district court is the judge who would make that manifestly erroneous judgment. Judge Torres, who was working on this matter with Judge Annette Byrne and likely knew what Judge Netberg was going to do with this issue. So, while we are not conspiracy theorists by nature, the fact that the SEC is considering appealing this ruling implies to us that the SEC is trying to avoid proceeding. We're not sure why they're so desperate. However, there is something wrong with it. Here's the catch. While Ripple is unlikely to know exactly what the SEC is concealing, it's possible that they do. But after today, we don't believe so, and the bad news is that Judge Annette Byrne will be quite limited in what Ripple may inquire about. She was exceptionally explicit near the end of the hearing when we thought she was getting a little irritated with everyone that the speech is what makes the case unique. Perhaps the events that led up to the speech we're arguing about is that there's something here that has to be excavated, and the question is whether or not Ripple will be able to do so. We don't know the solution right now. But we do know that this war is far from finished and that this subject will be brought before Judge Annette Byrne again. Everyone now knows there's too much writing on it, we assure it. Let's take a look at the chart and see what the price of XRP is doing on July 16, shall we? XRP had been consolidating above $0.650 until July 7, but the drop on July 8 scattered the support, and the level became resistance for the international settlements coin. The $0.650 level's strength can be ascribed to a low of $0.652 on May 23 and a sequence of highs dating back to early 2021 and December 2020. The failure of XRP pricing to recoup $0.650 recently indicates that the trading range that has dictated price behavior since the end of June is being expanded. On the upside, the 200-day SMA is at $0.747, and the 78.6% retracement of the 2021 surge is at $0.555. The steep contraction of the Ripple 14-day average true range, ATR, back to the April levels that are preceding the unrelenting climb to $1.96 as a bullish event stemming from the tight XRP price action. ATR readings at present levels, in fact, have frequently foreshadowed price thrusts of various degrees. Of course, the drop in volatility could last for weeks, but it should at the very least lead Ripple investors to recognize the potential in recent price behavior. If there is no fluctuation, the price of XRP will remain stuck between $0.747 and $0.555. As a result, it is recommended that speculators delay making risky investment decisions until confirmation is obtained. Finally, on the daily chart, Ripple is approaching a bearish death cross formation as the 50-day SMA approaches the 200-day SMA, putting more downward pressure on the XRP price. It is now time to take a look at the fact of the day. The idea that all cryptocurrencies are created to be payment methods is a prevalent misperception among newcomers to the cryptocurrency realm. If this is the case, it will be difficult to argue that we require more than Bitcoin and probably a few more cryptocurrencies. Many cryptocurrencies, including Ripple, were never intended to be used as payment currencies. To put it another way, your favorite merchant is unlikely to take XRP tokens anytime soon, and Ripple Labs is happy with it. Ripple, on the other hand, is a cryptocurrency developed as a payment transfer method, which means it's meant to transport money from point A to point B faster than conventional methods like wire transfers. How does it plan to accomplish this? Because it is both faster and less expensive than the alternatives. Do you think XRP will win the lawsuit? Kindly note that prices of cryptocurrencies frequently change, so by the time you watch this video, it might have changed to a whole new value. The information provided in this video does not constitute investment advice, financial advice, trading advice, or any other sort of advice, and you should not treat any of the content as such. The content in this video is for educational purposes only and hence should not be considered as financial advice. Do conduct your own due diligence and consult your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. If you want to continue to know about XRP, we have got 2 more videos waiting for you on the end screen to check out. Make sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video, my friend.